Welcome to the Clutch Burners Podcast, your home for stick shift drag racing, tech, awesome stick shift language, and more. And over there is Rich Guido, the Canadian Chuck Norris, who's probably getting ready to leave for sick week here pretty quick.
Yes, sir. And over there is Bill Armstrong, creator of the Bank Shift Billy, which Lonnie won't let anyone use. But
we're going to talk to him about that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so tonight we have a man on the podcast with a very impressive resume. That includes, and he may even add to it, National Tech Director at the NHRA. Wait, there's more. Tech Director for Horsepower Wars. There's more. Competition Director at LS Fest, Holly LS Fest. And yes, there's more. Former Tech Director at NMCA, NMRA, and PDRA, and a former crew chief at NASCAR. Lonnie Grim. Did I miss anything?
Oh man, it's just that list is very humbling. It's there's a lot of years in the making to be able to do what I do and have been able to do what I've done in the past. And I'm anxious to my new saying for the last couple of years, people hear me say this a lot, is really just to make tomorrow better than yesterday, no matter what event it may be, whether it be all of the NHRA and what we're doing there, trying to grow things in new directions over there, still being a part of the drag and drive culture. So I'm very blessed that NHRA has allows me to still be a part of a lot of different events. You mentioned LS Fest. We was there from the very beginning, and that team still continues to strive and set new goals and reach new heights with all the LS Fest events that are going on, and Midwest Pro Mods and PDRA and NMCA. All those guys are Northeast Pro Mods. So just very blessed to have been part of a lot of those organizations over the years, or some small amount of help, whether it be in their rules and how they conducted their events. No matter what, any successful organization or successful event is not one person. It's a successful team, and a team has the same goal at the end of the day. And usually I say my goal is that I want you waving as you leave the gate, just as I waved at you coming in the gate. So it's really about the appreciation of the customer. We're all in a laughing time now that customer service is very difficult. It's difficult to speak to somebody. It's difficult to speak to somebody that has any knowledge that can really help your situation without just reading it off a screen and trying to help you. And really, one-on-one customer service is, not to say non-existent, but it is it's a lot less these days than it used to be in the past. And so on the event side, the drag and drive, the NHRA, the every event that's going on, everybody is striving to provide a very high level of customer service. Sometimes, all the time, you're not going to visit with the customer when he's in the best mood, especially if he's got to talk to the tech director. But still, I always say that there's a right and a wrong way to talk to people, even if they're frustrated. I came from the driver's seat. I've been fortunate to sit in the driver's seat a long time at a pretty high level. And so I understand what that feels like, sitting in the driver's seat when you're given some information that don't make you too happy. So
tell us about that. Where have you been in the driver's seat? We didn't list anything about you driving.
Yeah, so I grew up street racing, Arkansas, young age.
Can I ask something real quick?
Yeah.
Are you in fact in the driver's seat right now?
I am in the driver's seat right now. I am. I would have had to explain to my in-law family of what in the world I was talking about sitting in the living room. We just had a nice little chili dinner. And so I came outside to do this with you guys, and left them in there with the cake and the lemon bars and whatever else they cooked for dessert. So
well, we sure do appreciate it. Sorry to keep going.
No, it's great. So The driver's seat side, I grew up racing motocross, and here was four-wheelers and motocross and flat track and TT racing, and all that was a big part of my growing up. I was a roller skate speed racer when I was just a kid. Go to the roller rink on Saturday night, man. I was looking for the blue ribbon, and so speed and all that's kind of always been in my blood, and competitive at nature. Played high school and college sports, and then really ended up in front of a local judge that really mentored me into going to the racetrack and getting off the street. So when I was young, when I was 16, 17 years old, we lost a great friend of ours here locally in a street race, and he was just a bystander. He had raced earlier that evening. He was leaned up against his 65 Mustang, and two cars left the starting line. One broken axle and collected him on the side of the road, still leaned up against his Mustang. So some of those things had gone on, and some of those things unfortunately still go on. And hey, man, it was when I was doing it, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world, man. I'm going street racing. We meet uptown. We tried to go without a big group of people, just go get it done and come back uptown and see who won 100, 200, 400. Now those pots are way bigger. But early on, a judge asked me to get off the street and go to the racetrack. And so I was fortunate, had a old Dodge 5-speed Cummins diesel that needed a couple quarts of oil to get 90 miles to the racetrack, and a little open trailer with a little toolbox on the front of it. I could throw a 5-gallon gas jug in, and a hammer and a crescent wrench or something. And anyway, I took my street car and started going to the racetrack, and eventually the street car really became race car. So I was in the street rod business for 25 plus years. We did in-house paint, wire, upholstery, fabrication, turnkey street rods. And somebody said, "How'd you get out of that business?" I said, "I quit going to the street rod nationals and started going to the US nationals." And so street rods turned into race cars. And so race car business, I never did advertise that business. When I raced and on the road full time with NHRA racing, I would try to stop and wire a car or reset up a 4-link or test drive a car and make it better. And I may even be racing that particular person the next weekend. I ran Super Comp, Super Gas, some Top Sportsman, Top Dragster. Through my grow up years, I had opportunity to work on a number of pro stock teams. The NASCAR deal came from working with Larry Nance on his Catch 22 car in Seattle, Washington. Guy walks up and goes, "Hey, I'm Larry Carnes from LCR over in NASCAR. Could I call you next week and talk to you about maybe helping us out?" So long story short, that turned into a phone call. That turned into a 1.5-year stint in NASCAR as a Winston West crew chief. And that was a pretty serious deal. So that was Busch Grand National on the West Coast is what it was, called Winston West. You ran a cup car with a truck motor, and that was Winston West. And
Cool.
So Kevin Harvick was the last year before he went to DEI to drive over for Earnhardt's. Kevin Harvick won the championship the year I was there in 95 and 96. So it's lots of events from the ground floor. This thing is maybe never going to make it till you look at what LS Fest is today, drag week, how it's come along over the years. And again, it's never one person. It is a whole group of people that is trying to make tomorrow better than yesterday.
That is awesome. NASCAR is a pretty wild animal as far as the stuff that goes on there. And yeah, I mean, it's aside from F1, I feel like NASCAR probably has pushed the envelope for an internal combustion engine, certainly for push rod engine more than anybody. At least that's my opinion.
And the other thing about NASCAR is that they strive forward on safety. So from the safe barrier walls to the way that they position the driver in the car and seat belts, and just they do they do a tremendous job with safety, and none of us want to go out and wreck anything over 200 mile an hour, but those guys do it pretty often. And they wave around a yellow flag for a few minutes, get it out of the way, and most of the time everybody over there walks away unscathed. And they have some pretty nasty accidents. But yeah, NASCAR's we work closely with those guys over on the safety side with Dave Green and his whole team. And so since I came on with NHRA at this level, it's been really unique to be able to meet a lot of people, a lot of very high ups, whether they were Formula One, IRL, NASCAR with Dave Green, all the World of Outlaws guys. So it's always good when we get to PRI show that we all get to be like our own little round table and talk about things that happened in the past year and how we can make it better.
That's awesome. Impressive, really. Yeah.
One of the questions we were going to ask you is how do you become so good at tech? And obviously going from the driver's seat to building the cars like you described, I guess it's just all those years of doing it yourself and then checking other people's equipment.
That's definitely a help, or that definitely pushes you forward. There is a lot of great tech guys that have never sat in the driver's seat. They're not fabricators. They just learn the rule book. They learn the class for which they have interest or passion in. Like, there's a lot of great tech guys, but you couldn't take all of them and throw them at stock and super stock. They would be like, I have no idea. My stock and super stock only gets helped on the engine platform side from my involvement with Engine Masters. So I was the director for Engine Masters for a number of years, and COVID slowed us down with that particular event, but we hope that it comes back at some point in time. But yeah, so Engine Masters helped me with learning on the stock super stock side, because there you've kind of got a certain box that you can play in within the rules. And obviously everybody tries to push the rules. I was that guy when I was in the driver's seat myself. So
yep.
So it's just a matter of, these are the guidelines that we have to go by. And really with stock, super stock, it's a lot about just measuring CCs and runner volumes and piston deck heights and total deck areas. So you can get to different deck areas with the gasket thickness or whatever. But yeah, so you got a total deck you got to work with, and whether that's a short rod, a moved piston pin, or a thicker gasket, there's a number of ways to get there. But that's what. So yes, what makes you a good tech guy is what makes you a good driver is laps or runs or numbers of runs. No different than a tech guy. It's I am blessed to have had a lot of opportunity and tried to do the most I could with that opportunity that was given.
So let me ask you a question about tech, because I've experienced this before. I know Rich probably has, and I bet lots of our listeners have as well. How much of that rule book is subject to interpretation instead of just black and white? Because there's a bit of gray area in there, and I feel like if you can have a reasonable grown-up relationship with the tech guy and explain your interpretation, you may actually change their mind as to what they think is legal and what is not.
Sometimes that is correct. The more educated you are as a racer with the rule book in hand and understanding that rule book, the better your argument may be. That doesn't mean you're going to win the argument, but with by having some knowledge about what you are trying to get them to look at it your way or your interpretation. Yes. So it still is going to come down to the interpretation of the rule book by the person that is the official. The problem with that we try to do across the NHRA is we're trying to do our absolute level best to where the rule book is written to where the interpretation is, there's less interpretation, meaning starts with a capital, ends with a period. Yes, no, or does not apply is to every sentence in the rule book. That's where the education part from the tech official whether it be track level or organization level. That's where the information from the track official or the tech official, I guess to say, is the official ruling at that moment. But a lot of times there's been cases in the past where, like in NASCAR, when I was there, it was their way and it was the only way and it was the highway. But if you knew the rule book well enough, instead of them trying to make you feel like they were trying to make you have a bad day, you maneuvered through that rule book because you were educated with it. And so there was a number of things that I probably would have rolled out of the tech line and went and did something I really didn't have to do had I not known or familiarized myself with the rule book. But because I did, I kind of stated my argument, especially in a tech lane at the California 500. And I stated my argument and they let me pass. It wasn't that they changed their ways. They maybe just didn't pound the gavel that day, And so, but it's a great question. I think it's worthy. I wish more people did read the rule book, both in the general regs and just in their class. But it's amazing that most people that I have to point out a rule infraction, I do have to also show it to them in the rule book. They didn't know it was there.
And I think that applies to, certainly the NHRA rulebook is kind of the Bible underlying everything or overlying everything. But when you get to specific events, they have different rules for different classes. And I think that interpretation too, those are not nearly as detailed. And I think one should be flattered if they change the rules because of something you did the previous year. They do it the next year to exclude you specifically. You should be very flattered. But yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that. So,
well, and I think from my point of view, the best thing you can do is get to know the tech guy. Like, I built my own cage and I was sending pictures back and forth and asking lots of questions. And there's no point in setting yourself up for a failure or an argument.
For sure.
If make those guys your friend, and they're always willing to help. So I've never had any issue calling one of them up and asking the questions, whether it's Keith Turk before you go to drag week or whether it's your local guy before you build a cage. Like, it's not that hard to reach out nowadays and ask those questions, especially when you're building something you're not familiar with. Just call them up and ask. They'll tell you, and they'll help. They'll give you ideas. I know our local guy was fantastic when I was building my cage, especially because I wanted to go around the armrests and all that kind of stuff. He was fantastic.
Yeah. So Lonnie, since this is actually a stick shift podcast, let's talk about perhaps the most exciting newest class coming out, the Factory X class. I could just see his face. Did you see his eyes light up? He's excited about this too. So tell us about it. We got loads of questions, but just give us the overview and then we'll just dive in from there.
So, tell you about Factory X in just a second. Let me tell you my Roy Hills race school little short story.
Yeah.
So I went to Roy Hills. I've been there 4 or 5 different times, guest instructor a few times, drove the 2-seater dragster a couple times, helped the top sportsman group there. But the first time I went to Roy Hills School, I went there with my quick 8-door car. Had a 555-inch motor when that sounded like 700 inches. This was 1994, 95. 555 was like a mountain motor. I was running some quick 8 door slammer stuff around Arkansas, southern Missouri, Mississippi. And my dad decided that, hey, we probably need to go make this legit, get a license. There's this guy named Roy Hill, which ended up becoming a great friend. But Roy was like a drill sergeant. So I roll in. I'm a pretty hot little shoe. I got a hot little car, a little Firebird. And I'm not thinking that he's not telling me good stuff, not teaching me good stuff.
Rich,
I just
did you hear
wasn't.
that? It's a Pontiac.
Well,
it was
kind of like nice.
and it was a situation where where I was still to this day. I don't get upset. I don't get frazzled. I don't get emotional. I get emotional when somebody wins for the first time. That's the most emotional I'll get, is when somebody wins, because I remember what that feeling was like. But so I'm pretty even keel all the time at the racetrack, no matter what the situation is, from very intense to very laid back. Well, I'm at Roy Hills, and long story short, Roy, by the end of the first day, he don't think he has my undivided attention. He says, "Hey," he said, "that Grim kid over there." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You see that probe over there?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Go get that car and bring it to the starting line." I said, "Well, I brought my own car to your school. I wasn't going to drive your stuff." And he goes, "No, I need you to go get that right now and bring it to the starting line." "Yes, sir." So I'm headed towards the door of a car that I've never sat in. It is 706 cubic inches of Ford power. It's their probe pro stocker. And to say, did he get my undivided attention? Yes, still cool as a cucumber, but I had to go up there, do a burnout, shift 3 gears and shut it off, launch it, shift 3 gears, shut it off. And yes, he had my undivided attention. I didn't get rattled. I didn't get frazzled. He had my undivided attention. So when I say that, stick shift, I've not, other than the stuff I drove at Roy Hills, I've not been in a pro stocker. I've not been in a Mountain Motor pro stock deal or a old, shifting pro mod car, other than Roy Hill's deal. But I can tell you that stepping off of a left pedal on the other side at about 6,200 RPM is the most fascinating thing that you'll ever do. And I've drove some very fast stuff, the automatic trans brake, that kind of stuff, whether you shifted it or it shifted itself, didn't matter. But when you step off a third pedal on the left foot and don't quite have yourself braced, it will kick your head back and you're reaching to find the gear shift and pull another gear. This thing excites. So let's talk about Factory X. That thing excites me to the max. It's
you see the giant smiles on my face.
I love
you say all
this
that.
Is gonna 12 months from now, this is going to be so cool. And the only reason I say 12 months from now, it's going to take people a little bit to get these cars built. There's a bunch of them in the works. But I think as soon as these things start doing third, fourth, and fifth gear burnouts and leaving the starting line going one flat 980 60 foots on a 10.5W tire, this thing will pucker you up, in the seat of your pants too. It's going to weigh 2,650 pounds. It's not super aerodynamic, even though these cars will run down the highway at 170 or 80 mile an hour. This thing's not super aerodynamic to go down a racetrack. So it's going to pucker you up a little bit on 10.5W tire, 2,650 pounds, about 6.8 seconds, pull the parachute, both of them, and hold on. So this is going to be fun.
And Lonnie, this was your brainchild?
Yeah. So there's a number of us that were working towards something new, something exciting. Really, the way this got pushed forward, so to speak, was for whatever reason, and all of us love the smell. We love to hear a camshaft. We love the smell of racing fuel. We love all that. The deal is that the OEMs are highly involved in the electric market and what they want to do. And I've rode in some Tesla Plaids, and they are amazing as far as the torque and power that they have. It's not my cup of tea, but I'm going to embrace those things to come race. It's more customers, it's more people. It's a whole nother group of people that want to go race with electric. The deal is that the OEMs wanted some kind of target. How do we build a fast, high performance electric vehicle? And we don't, can it weigh 5,000 pounds? Well, no. Well, can it go 6 flat at 230? Well, no. So here, let's do 3,600 pounds, 650. That's 25.3 chassis. There's your target. Now go to work on your batteries. If you can get the batteries a lot lighter, you can meet the 3,600 pound. We can go 650s. We can go fast, and we can be safe. So that conversation started just a point of direction for the OEs to work on fast electric stuff. And really, we took that and go, hey, let's do the ICE version of tube chassis, pro stock from the firewall back, factory showdown from the firewall forward in power plant. Let's put an 8-inch clutch so you don't have to service the clutch every time you pull it off the racetrack like you would a pro stock car. These things make, man, I'm going to tell you, they make somewhere between 1,300 and 1,600 horsepower.
That sounds perfect. That sounds perfect.
I know. I'm telling you, I told Keith Turk, I said, the minute that you can't make it, or you got a sniffle, or you got an ear infection, the minute that you can't make it and your car needs to be tested, holler at me. I still got my license.
Nice.
So the whole thing.
Can I get on the wait list for that too? I mean, I have a license.
Man, yes, this is going to be awesome. The deal is you can build this thing from a fled car. You can go to your local body shop, order a roof panel, 2 quarter panels. There's your steel roof and quarters. The composite stuff is coming along. It's not going to be like stupid, crazy expensive. The shock package, you can literally buy it from Jegs or Summit. Like, all the high technology for shocks is not in this car. It can't have wires. It can't have hoses. So there's no inverters. There's no electric dumps. There's none of that. This is double or triple adjustable struts and rear shocks that you literally can order from Jegs and Summit. I know people are, they're ordering Penske's or whoever's, and that's fine. The big name builders will build these cars, and that's fine. But the little name builders are going to build these cars because they're most used to building like X275 steel roof, steel quarter cars. So this thing's going to be exciting, and it's not as I think you can build the car at whatever expense level you want. I don't think it takes some crazy expensive car to go out and have fun and be competitive.
So in your mind, what does that dollar number look like to put one of these together?
So if you were looking at going top sportsman racing right now, just I think call it a top sportsman roller from Jerry Bickle, that thing brand new is like 75 grand. I have talked to some builders that are steel roof and quarter builder guys, and they say, hey, I can build this roller for 75 grand. When you talk to the big name builders, I think it may be twice that they're going to get for these cars. And they build works of art without a doubt. But
that's a roller. So is there a drivetrain package that's accepted for these? Like, what's the rules on that?
Oh, I wish I could say that. So here's not really the drawback. Here's the catch 22. So yes, you can call and order a crate motor complete from GM, Ford, or Dodge. The problem is that you're going to uncrate it and it's going to make about 800 horsepower.
Oh, that's not going to work.
Right. And so I wish Factory Showdown was a crate motor horsepower class, but it's not. So what they've been able to do in Factory Showdown, it's still the factory head, it's still the factory block, it's still the factory supercharger. It just goes to show you how much detail that you can send to a builder that knows what's going on. And whether it be Bischoff or a David Barton, Greg Stanfield, any of those guys, Holbrook, any of those guys can take these stock engines and massage them in a way that when they hand them back to you, they make 1,300 to 1,500 horsepower. And it's amazing. So
I was reading,
that's really the only drawback.
I was reading the rules, and so factory blower, like, so my head goes right to boost. So if they're stock 650, 700 horse, that's with a certain amount of boost. And obviously if you double that, you could double the horsepower. But if you're using the same blower, I mean, there's only so fast you can spin that thing. So it's pretty cool to understand that, you know, with the same blower, they're going to be able to make that kind of horsepower.
Yeah, so the blower speed is indicative of the crankshaft RPM. So like a street car's not turning the crankshaft RPM 10,000 RPM,
Yeah.
but the factory showdown engines they're up there, they're upwards of 10,000. We've seen some Ford stuff almost at 11,000 RPM.
Wow.
So the pulleys that they have to race with are actually.
You said Ford stuff at 11?
Yeah.
Nice.
I did. Now, the Ford guys aren't happy with none of us that make the rules right now, because everybody that makes the rules has said 10,200 is the limit. So they're all on 10,200 rev limiters, no matter where you go race.
And
You just gotta you gotta protect them from themselves when they want to turn at 11,000.
So yeah,
the class that Ben Strader is Robbie Blankenship. How is that different than this class?
Okay, so like Robbie Blankenship class, that's NA 10.5.
Right.
So that's a true 10.5 tire. That's not a W. So they're on 29 10.5, what we call true 10.5. The 10.5W really it should be called a 1432, but it's called a 10.5W. And so it's 33 tall, 10.5W wide. So the W really gets you to about 14 inches wide. Robbie's class is a no power adder. It is the holy grail of naturally aspirated. They do run it with automatics or 5 speeds, where they'll use a lot of G-force, some Liberties. Robbie, great racer. That is an outstanding. I love that class. That class almost died in NMCA competition for a good while. And there was a number of us that got together, Dave Weremeyer, myself, Mike Galimi. So really some big names in the industry that have been involved and were involved with NMCA at the time. We stabilized the rules so where the rules wouldn't change for quite a period of time, just little small weight adjustments here and there. And we stabilized the rules for that category. And it is a absolutely outstanding, growing really well category over there in NMCA. And they call it NA 10.5. And Mike DeMeo, Robbie Blankenship, Dwight Asmuth. There's a lot of Vince Corey. There's some old pro stock names that have fiddled around in that class as well. Your Cameron Bowles and his grandpa. There's a lot of great competitors in NA 10.5. What separates the difference of that and this is the fact that these all have a factory supercharger on top of them. So these are all power adder motors.
So Lonnie, what are the changes they're allowed to do? You know, heads, valve train, cam. I mean, can they modify the blowers or not?
No, they cannot modify the blowers. There is some trickery magic in timing the blower when you time the rotors to the blower. So even for a street person that turns it up at a higher RPM, they would see some advantage in having the rotors timed in their street blower. But that's really, until you think that you've used all the power you have, you don't need to look at that. Can you modify the blower? No. Can you modify the factory intake? No. The heads are where the biggest thing is. So the heads still have a intake and exhaust runner volumes, CC volumes, but the builders have been allowed to manipulate the runners of those heads to where they're a lot better. Obviously, the Coyote platform, the third gen Hemi platform is a really good head. The LS, it's a low degree head, so it's so some of the same things that we used to squander about with the 23 degree Chevy stuff is all way better now because the factory angle is a lot shallower.
Will you go into some detail about timing the blower? I'm not familiar with that. What does that mean exactly?
So yeah, so most everybody would understand when you put a crankshaft sprocket on a single crankshaft motor and you're timing the crankshaft to the camshaft. So you got a cam sprocket, a crank sprocket. If you're just putting a heads up, it's a dot to dot kind of deal. From there, you'll retard or advanced roll the camshaft forward or backwards a couple degrees based on what your engine builder tells you or based on what you want to do. Well, the blower works very similar. So it has the rotors has two rotors in a screw blower. The rotors, if they're, they just pack them in there from the factory and they're really not timed. So what'll happen is they'll have areas that at one part of their rotation, they'll have closer proximities. And then at the worst part of the rotation, they'll have further away proximities. So then the blower is less efficient. So when we say time the rotors, what it does is it really just blueprints the rotor, the A and the B rotor, to be able to get the proximities as average as they can be throughout the rotation of the blower, which in turn makes the blower more efficient at the same RPM. But none of that really holds a candle till you're spinning the blower well up into your crankshaft RPM is 8,000 or 9,000 RPM or above. And then your blower speeds are obviously 3 to 1 from that, 3.25. So the blower speeds, shaft speeds are really high in the blower.
It makes me feel, it makes me feel good to hear you say average is the most efficient. I like that.
It is, because those proximities, and I'm not a blower guy. I've only listened to what they'll tell me when I ask, trying to educate myself as to what makes a good blower from a bad blower. And so everybody on the street don't have to think that they got to run out and time their rotors on their blower. It really is for race applications.
And the cubic inches on all three motors, are they the same?
You are, I think, I don't have a rule in front of me, but I think it's 60 or 80 over bore is all you can have. So I think it may be 60 over. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but class racer will let me know that I was wrong. But yeah, it's 60 or 80 over. And that's all the cubic inch you can have. You can't stroke the crankshafts. Can't even be, there's very few aftermarket crankshafts. I mean, these are these factory showdown engines are stock.
Jeez.
Yeah. So there's some pistons. There's aftermarket pistons that are allowed through a couple different manufacturers, but the factory stuff already comes with some really nice parts already in it.
And the rule set says you have to use NHRA fuel. So what fuel are they using?
So in factory showdown currently, you can run a number of the Sunoco fuels. You can run a number of the VP fuels. So in this factory X category, it's going to be very similar. You'll be able to run from, we haven't set a spec fuel for it yet, but you could run like SR18, C25, VP, SR18 being Sunoco. There's going to be around the 114, 116 octane fuel is what it'll take.
So like C16, that would work?
C16 that's a really great nitrous fuel. It's a slower burn. It actually is a very successful fuel as far as consistency. There's a lot of people bracket race on C16. I ran C16 for a long time. VP's got some new products called X16. Obviously the Q16 being oxygenated. The Sunoco has some great fuels as well. But yeah, so C16 normally for a boosted application, the C16 probably is a fuel that it would be good. It's just probably a little bit slower burn than you would want and for an all-out effort.
Yeah.
But C16 is a great fuel. It's easy to read the plug with. The tune-up is not like on the edge. It was the nitrous, real friendly to nitrous. So if a guy wants to put a little gas on it, that's good.
Yeah, I know Rich runs C16 and I run the Sunoco Max NOS, but I believe that's pretty much Sunoco's C16 variant. So
that's right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
The tires, they're can they be radials or slicks, or they have to be
right now they are slicks only. Right now, all the manufacturers, and really that comes down to three: Hoosier, Goodyear, and Mickey Thompson. At some point, we may have a spec tire. It may be one brand, but currently, if we're testing today, you can run the Hoosier, great tire, Goodyear, great tire, Mickey Thompson. That's kind of been the lifeblood of 10.5W tire, 33 10.5W. People have been very fast on that tire on the Mickey. And so all three of them, great tire. But right now you could run any three of those brands. The deal is also on this particular class, so to keep people from playing with rollouts because rollout is your friend when you're limited on tire. So when you have a limited tread print width, then you will always succumb to, I want rollout. So what we did is to keep all that from happening. 1616 double bead lock is the wheel that's mandatory for Factory X. So you can't play with a bunch of rollout, because I would have guys trying to run it on a 12-inch wide wheel, have them about a 34.5-inch tall tire, and trying to run it as a big rollout tire. But so in the rule set, it says you have to run a 1616 double bead lock.
Interesting. And this is a little side thing, but I heard Goodyear bought Mickey Thompson. Do you think the tire will change, or will they keep their formula?
So you would hope. I mean, it's been a very successful tire for Mickey Thompson, I guess, if anything. But we've also, a bunch of us have also seen the Goodyear 10.5 has done really well from time to time in different settings. But I guess if anything, you would see the Mickey Thompson formula kind of fall over to the Goodyear tire, maybe. Goodyear, we're with those guys a lot because of the Top Fuel and Funny Car stuff in NHRA, and the Goodyear tire team that's on the performance racing tire side. Those guys are phenomenal. They're all engineers. They're all very, very smart, but they're all gearheads at the end of the day. And so they love racing, and I love to talk tire stuff with them. And some of those guys, a few of them from the racing side, they're again very smart guys. But yeah, that's right. Mickey Thompson was acquired by Goodyear, and so no matter what tire we see on the back of these Factory X cars, we think it's going to be a good one.
Nice.
So before we get into clutch and transmission, which is our favorite topic, on the video that you did at PRI, you talked about the containment seat, like it was something a little different. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. So one of the things for years and years and years, containment seats, as they've came along, and the containment seat is one that meets a certain specification. In this case, 39.1 and 39.2 is SFI's specification. FIA has a couple 2019, a 2020. FIA is another sanctioning. That's more of a European sanctioning body, but they have containment seat parameters that they meet as well. And so either the FIA or the 39, either the FIA or the SFI both work in this Factory X car. Since the inception of NHRA, we've always said that, hey, you can do more safety than what's required by the rule book. And so up until this point, a containment seat has been something by choice, not by rule book. In Factory X, we decided to start with requiring you to be in a containment seat. As these cars have gotten faster, especially we see the cars that want to climb the ring gear, like a lot of boosted application cars that tend to go down the racetrack and start to apply a lot of power and put some timing in, and they have enough power to try to drive the rear end underneath the front end, and it flies the front end down there about half track. One of the worst things that's happening with those situations is when it sets the car back down, there's no good way to set it down softly. Even though we may think it looks soft from the outside, that thing is pretty violent. And so that compression on the bottom of the seat to the driver's spine is something that we've been trying to get better at. In Pro Mod this year, we made it a rule to where you have to have, a lot of guys are familiar with pour in seats. So the pour in seat for Pro Mod, we made it where Pro Mod Pro Stock, you have to have at least 3/4 of an inch of padding under the driver. So under your buttocks. With the containment seat, all that is built into it. It's built like this super comfortable, big bucket seat. Like, we're all familiar with the Kirkies and the different Recaros and different models of race seats. Well, this containment seat makes you feel like you're kind of part of it. It really feels like a lazy boy sitting in your race car, but it has a lot of safety advantages to it that we felt like that was a good idea to put in this new class of Factory X.
It sounds like this might be better than the bench seat that's currently in my car.
It would be. Bench seats are cool though.
Well, when you said lazy boy, it made me think about that.
I sat in that one that Jeff Turk and them, they picked a race quip to put in that Factory X car that was at PRI.
Mm-hmm.
And that thing is super comfortable. And if you was to get stuck in the stage lanes for a while, I would probably tell somebody, hey, unless it's 110 degrees, I'm fine. Just leave me here. So it was really comfortable. It bolsters around your shoulders. It has kind of a headrest built into it. The mock-up of the seat belts and how they come through the seat are the way the seat belt should tie you down in the car. So the containment seats have a lot of their own safety. Now, again, so they're only going to be as good as how you mount them. But at the same token, if they're properly mounted, it does give you the best. It really gives you the best foot forward, the best safety in the event of an incident.
Yeah, it's almost one of the most frightening times I had was at the salt flats, bolting a friend in to a car that was going to go 200 and I think he went like 290 miles an hour. And strapping somebody in there, and then even when the tech guy comes over and can stick his finger in there, going, nope, not tight enough, and the guy's already like clamped down. But as you visualize him going in circles in the air and landing, it's pretty important to have a good quality seat. Thanks for clearing that up, though. I knew there was a reason they highlighted it. I just didn't understand it.
Yeah. So what? My understanding from the video we saw too was that it's only 3 cars that are allowed right now. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So 2000, it's the 6th gen Camaro. So what is that? 2018 and up.
Yep.
The 15 and up Mustang and a 15 and up Challenger. So,
okay.
So yeah, at the end of the day, you say there's 3. There's multiple years of it, but there's 3. Now, who can be involved? Anybody that sends me an official request. So the request doesn't get you the permission, but let's say Toyota wanted to do a Supra. and they wanted to put their Tundra supercharged V8 Tundra motor in a Supra and build one of them and say that's factory X. Okay, just send me an email. If it was Kia or Hyundai it doesn't matter to me. I'll look at any of them for their involvement in factory X. So, but currently, yes, it is Dodge, Ford, and Chevrolet.
And if I understand correctly, then it would have to be a factory supercharged engine as the power plant.
Currently, that is correct. Yes, but that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about clutches. So from what I read, maximum 3 discs, minimum diameter 8. But if a guy wanted to run a single 11-inch, could he do that?
He could. Yeah. There's a lot of people has a lot of different ideas on the clutches, and how that clutch will operate in the car. Most of the time, the smaller you can make it, and you add disc to make up contact area. So let's say, in a sense, let's say if you put a single 11 in it, would it blow through a single 11 if it truly makes 1,500 horsepower and 1,300 foot-pounds of torque? It might, depending on how much base pressure you would put on it. But so what I think we're going to see most of, I think we're going to see 2-disc 8-inch I think that's going to be the normal. It appears that 2-disc 8-inch doesn't look like that you will have to cut it or pull it after every run. If you started your event pretty close with the clutch and you just kind of hang some grams on it or take some grams off for counter, you might put a quarter, half turn, or a turn of base in or base out. We think that a small husband and wife crew, father-son crew could run this car all weekend and never pull the clutch. Now, if you miss it and blow through it, smoke it, you're going to need to pull it out, touch it up, have a clutch machine and all that jazz. But you're right. The rules are written to where it is a 8-inch minimum up to 3-disc. And so if somebody come along and go, hey, I think I can sling that 11-inch around and that 11-inch diaphragm and that 10.5-inch plate, I think I can sling that around and still put that power through the transmission, through the drive shaft. And if so, we may see that.
Yeah, Lonnie.
We may see a guy with 10-inch. That's a great point. A lot of them are following along with, well, what's the pro stock guys do? Well, the pro stock guys got a 6.5-inch clutch. You can't miss it like 3 grams, and you got to pull it out every time. If you go up and do the perfect burnout, it probably still needs to be pulled out and cut, so and they make about the same horsepower. They make right around 1,500 horsepower is what a common day pro stock car makes, and they do it with a 6.5-inch clutch, multiple discs, but a 6.5-inch clutch.
Because I was wondering that when I saw the minimum 8, so that makes sense. So I personally have 2 clutches. I have a single 11-inch adjustable, and I have a dual 8-inch adjustable. And my car is 4,000 pounds, makes 1,500 horsepower, and I've made them both work actually. Because I drive so much, the 11-inch is a little heavier. It's a little nicer to drive on the street, but my quickest 60-foot was with a dual 8. So I'm pretty interested to see what they end up with. That's pretty cool.
So I have a clutch question as well. I have a little bit different scenario. I run a twin 10-inch, 10.5-inch, depending on the flavor of the day, diaphragm style clutch. And I use a clutch controller to allow that thing to operate like a slipper clutch on the launch. And because I street drive it, the diaphragm is super nice. I don't have to get under the car to make any adjustments. I can make those adjustments from an app on my phone, but it only controls the release of the clutch. So doesn't could that be used in this class?
No, this is left foot. You are going to have to push it with part of your heel and all of your toe. It's going to have a tremendous amount of bass to it. And when you rev it up to about, I think they're going to leave somewhere in the 62 to 6,800 RPM range. And when you mat the throttle with this hat style clutch or non-diaphragm style clutch, this thing is going to try to shove your foot straight off the pedal.
Yeah.
This is where the driver part of Factory X comes in. I guess to say, if we were going to look at this particular class, and I love the slipper clutches and I love the clutch controllers and stuff, the technology that's out there. But if we were going to look at that for this class, I would have put automatics in with the trans brake. So this is real live, no slipper clutch, no clutch control. You're going to have to step off of it with your left foot to cut a light and have a reaction time.
So and maybe I didn't explain, I still launch the car with my left foot. Same thing. It's not like a button or anything like that. But instead of adjusting counterweight and base pressure, you're just adjusting the release of that diaphragm. That's really all you're
That's
doing.
correct. You're just controlling the rate of the release. Well, so
Sort of, yeah.
Here's one other piece for you. In Factory X, because the titanium can, because of the 8-inch clutch, and it'll be above 10,000 RPM, at that amount of torque and power level, 6.3 was the SFI spec that was required to contain that clutch in a catastrophic explosion. The 6.3 can does not have a clutch fork. It is a cross shaft. So these are cross shaft cans. Makes the builders think a little bit more trying to get to the clutch shaft. A lot of them don't like it because it's a slower mechanism for release than a clutch fork. But the one thing about Factory X is, and I won't get too far off topic, but it will run on a true 400 Pro tree. Most of NHRA's Pro trees in the past few years have been a 370 tree, even though it was always said it's a 400 tree. It was sped up 0.3 because when the LED lights were introduced, they were much quicker than the incandescents. So it started making pro stock motorcycle. A lot of those cars and bikes go red. So to fix the red light problem, they just sped up the tree. And all the racers at an NHRA national event, if you raced on a pro tree, you were on this faster tree. Well, last year, we went back as a tech department and made some changes and got wholehearted support to slow the tree back down. So it is a true 400 tree. And so the guys that were going green and O's now had to put some time in their delay box or slow their cars down on how it left the starting line so that they would still remain green. So I know that's a lot of information all at once, but yes, so the cross shaft can will be slower than a clutch fork can, but the class is going to race on a true 400 Pro tree. So they'll be fine as far as reaction time goes. And as far as the category, no, we're not putting in any clutch controllers or rate of application control. That rate of application will come from how quick you step off of the pedal.
And can they run a hydraulic clutch, or are they limited to the cross shaft?
Limited to the cross shaft.
Okay.
Yep. And so it's just that we really wanted to make the cars where even though you have you can select whatever gear ratio you want throughout the Liberty 5-speed with it being a 1-to-1 fifth gear. You can select your first, second, third, fourth gear ratio to how it works best with your driving style, your engine combination. So, but realistically, the cars will be very much the same from the clutch back.
And,
Awesome.
and so it's
Yep.
not H pattern, it's vertigate.
It is. It's a inline. It's a vertigated inline pattern.
And
So-
you could, G-Force makes a similar transmission. Can you run G-Force or Liberty, or they all have to run Liberty?
No, so they're not limited to a Liberty. Just and you could run G-Force. Yes, they Leonard makes a great product. Obviously, was around Leonard for a long time. He himself is in a 10.5 multi-time champion, class we talked about earlier. And his son, Paul, we've all had long-term, long-standing relationships. The people over at Liberty, you've got Nicole, you got Craig, all of them over there are doing a great job with their transmission and their product as well. Most everybody we see right now for this category is buying a Liberty. Sometimes I think it's just they just follow the leader. And so this will be an interesting class when some guys get a hold of it that they don't know who they're supposed to follow. They just go out and do it. And this class will be super fun. And like I said, it's you can pick up the phone and buy an engine from a number of different people depending on the brand. You can buy a very competitive engine and then kind of just go off and do the program yourself as far as the car and the crew and that kind of stuff. And it'll be super interesting. We did in fact, I think I won't want to announce it now, but there is a Factory X schedule. I would like to tell you that it hit the airwaves this weekend. I'm not for sure of that, so I won't say, but there is a Factory X schedule for 2023. It is there's 2 races for exhibition, and then there's 6 events that will make the championship for 2023. And that schedule is finished. I'm not 100% sure it's announced. If it's not announced now, it'll be announced tomorrow.
And how many racers do you expect to come out this year?
So what we know is there's 9 cars in process right now. That's either partially welded together in the paint shop. So we think that by the time we get to our second exhibition, we solidly got an 8-car field. And then the 6-race championship probably is going to run anywhere from 8, 12. There could easily be 16 cars because money drives a lot of things. And now that you have more than a carrot on a string, now that you have, hey, this is when we are racing and this is when the championship is going to start. You have people out there that are willing to spend the money to get these builders to work on that. And when it's finished, you can go back to work on something else. And so, we've all had appointments at the chassis shop from time to time that somebody comes in that needs it a little bit worse than we do, gets theirs done before us. And it's just part of the business. And I'm glad to say that most chassis shops that I know are very busy right now, which is a good sign of the future.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about from the clutch back or transmission back. Talk about suspension. Like, what can they run? What's the difference between, say, a Factory X setup and Pro Stock?
So very, very much the same with the difference being the suspension package, the shocks and springs, struts on the front. In Pro Stock, you have shocks that have some very big technology in They're basically air dumps without being air dumps. What they do is they use the gas pressure gets overcome by the aerodynamic downforce pressure. And so the shock turns into an inerter, meaning that the downforce pressure, let's say, gets to be a 100 PSI, and the gas pressure in the shock is at 90 PSI. Well, now it turns the shock into an inerter, means lets the shock dump all the way down to its lowest setting, which gets the wing out of the air, gets the roof out of the air, gets it much slippier, much faster.
I see.
All
So,
that,
yep.
all that we don't have to talk about with Factory X. It is really, it's a double or triple adjustable. There's no fancy shocks. It can be 4-link. You could build this car ladder bar. You could build this car 3-link if you wanted something to prove. If you thought you could run at this level with a factory 4-link, you could do that, but you are permitted a full all-out race 4-link with the double adjustable brackets, that kind of stuff. So you're only permitted a 66-inch wheelie bar, so that'll be kind of fun. The wheelie bars can be 23 inches wide. They can be 66 inches long. And that's how fancy the wheelie bar can be. So, I think most everybody's going to build, the 10.5W tire is going to be right out to the edge of the fender well. They're going to try to keep the tub as small as possible in the car, to make it the most aerodynamic out of the wheel well. If you if you built a car for a big Pro Mod tire, 17 inches wide or whatever, and you go, oh, well, I'll just put a rear end in it and put this 10.5W tire on. Well, that sounds good and it'll work fine. But the deal is when you get some higher speeds down track, that rear wheel tub, as a great big wheel tub, will start to try to absorb some air, and you'll start to get some negative vacuum out of that area of the car, and which will in turn slow you down. So you see cars where they could put 1734s on, but they run 29 10.5Ws or 33 10.5Ws. Eighth mile, you never know. But quarter mile at over 200, you would see a little bit of a negative impact on that great big wheel well with a little bitty tire spinning in it.
Interesting.
That is.
And then we don't let you do anything to the body to correct that. The body is all 100% stock dimensional. Even the carbon fiber pieces are 100% stock dimensional. So the doors, the fenders, the hood, from 20 foot away, you won't know that this isn't an all steel car, just like the one sitting in the parking lot that you may have drove there to buy a ticket.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I got a question for Horsepower Wars. You ready for that one?
Oh yeah, I love that. That's another one, man. I had so much fun doing that.
What is the craziest thing that someone has tried to sneak by tech at Horsepower Wars? that you caught?
Okay, so there's one that was not caught that I was told about afterwards. That was pretty slick. It was cool. I was pissed at myself that I didn't catch it, but it didn't do them well. That's a show that karma will come bite you in a hurry. So still yet the best one, and we didn't write the script for this. It really was Nick and Adam's torque converter. That's been the one that's probably been played the most anyway, but that was the most fun for me, because it showed up in a box of the torque converter company. I rip open the box. There's an invoice there. I call the guy. I tell him that, hey, me and Adam and Nick are like, we're soul brothers. We're tight. And they're building me a motor right now, just like the one they're built for that horsepower wars thing. And they said, hey, they had ordered a converter from you and just told me to call you and tell you, hey, just get it set up and I'll give you a credit card and I want you to build the exact same converter. They weren't for sure how much it was going to cost me. I know that you helped them out, but I just wanted to re-inform you that they're great friends of mine. In fact, they're standing right here in the shop with me. And so the guy tells me, he goes, that thing, he said, I'm same thing I did for them. I really can't do it any better. It's going to be $1,330. That was the converter they were trying to get through Horsepower Wars for $250. And they had smoked it up with a torch. I knew the whole story before I asked them anything. And that's when I asked Nick, I said, how many drag weeks has this thing been on? He goes, oh man, it's quite a few. He said, it's Rocky Mountain. He said, that's why it got so hot. And he goes, but I'll get Adam and he can tell you the whole story. And so that's when Adam come in, and I just kept giving Adam rope and he just kept tying it to his neck and sinking himself.
So
but it was awesome. Man,
what's the one you didn't tell? You mentioned it, but you didn't tell us.
Yeah. So we had a group that won a really nice Holly fuel system, but it wasn't going to be big enough for the E85 that they wanted to run. What they had done was they snuck the fuel tank out the night before. They had planned on winning the second fuel system, right? And it only worked that they won it. They took the fuel tank out the night before in an ice chest, took it home with them, befriended some other businesses in town to let them use their shop. They cut the tank in half. They mounted an internal fuel pump in the tank and then brought the tank back the next day and put it back in place. I never knew it was gone. And so when they won the second fuel system and they were still going down the E85 road, I was like, in my mind, this is not going to work. This is not enough fuel system to do what you want to do. And they just kept playing it off like, man, this is all we got. This is what we're going to have to do. And maybe it won't run very well. And well, the whole time they had a secondary fuel system inside the tank.
Nice.
I love drag racers.
Yeah, good
right.
for them.
Right.
Hey man, I give them, it was good. Jim Howe still mad at me because I wouldn't let him use his ring compressor. They had one of the fixed ring and piston installers. We made them do a deal kind of like Hot Rodders of Tomorrow, where you got to disassemble, reassemble the small black Chevy. And Jim Howe was set up with, I'm talking about cream of the crop tools, man. He had a fixed ring compressor, so all of his pistons would have slid right back in. Well, none of the other three teams had one of those. They all had like the old ratchet style or the clamp style.
Yeah.
So I went and found Jim Howe one that you use an Allen wrench on, to tighten it up. And I took away his fixed spring compressor for that competition. And to this day, we're great friends. But to this day, you could ask him about if he has Lonnie says he needs a fixed ring compressor. Would you have one? You would loan him. So if you ever get Jim Howe on, just ask him about that. That's funny.
That's too funny.
We had some great times out there. They all the time guys were trying to get away with things and bring stuff in for Horsepower Wars, whether it was parts in their pocket or whatever. The deal is that by the end of the day, you either had to have the part came with the car that you were given, to start the competition with, because little Tooth Fairy didn't magically appear these parts overnight. So every couple of days when we'd start going through the cars and I'd go, hey, where'd this clamp come from? Where's those grade 8 bolts from? Blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, well, that's going to be $2. That's going to be $1. Fair market value is what we called it.
Yeah.
Let's say if you ever get Lyle Barnett on and you ask him, go, hey, Lonnie wanted me to remind you of something, fair market value. Yeah, it gets Lyle all fired up too. Hey, one of the things that I'm only going to tease about it. If you ask me a bunch of questions, I can't answer it, but I will tease about it just for the viewers. I know this Stick Shift Nation. This is all about rolling gears and having fun with clutches. There are some things in the works in NHRA that is going to be able to involve a lot of those people. For the ones of us for the drag and drive stuff, the street race category, this stuff, we're working on some things for you guys over on the NHRA side.
Nice.
Not to take you away from what you're doing, just to give you an opportunity to do more of it.
Like it.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I know that, when I go to our local track, I'll typically go on a bracket day because my car be passed for the Friday night deals. But I'm challenged to compete with the bracket guys in my stick car, in my 4,000 pound stick car that I drove to the track. So I'm excited to see what you guys have come up with. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What else we had on horsepower wars? Yeah, that was a pretty big fire, and one of the racers passing away. There was lots of drama on that TV show, eh?
Gosh dang, man. Just again, you couldn't write the script. Nobody would think they would want to spend the money to write a script to send cars towards competition. The trailer catches a wheel bearing on fire, ends up burning up two of the cars. One of the cars is completely salvaged. In the meantime, Joe ends up getting himself in a bad spot up in Nebraska on some no prep racing, in a track setting, not a street setting, and just car got out of control at the top end of the racetrack, and he succumbed to those injuries. That was one of the cars. That was the Mayhem group. That whole season for us to go back, rebuild the cars, for the Aussies to come back, for the Dream Team. They literally took their car from the ashes, man. There was nothing. It was burned up to a crisp, and rebuilt that thing. That was a great season. It was, and in that, they ended up winning a big award for a production award for that. Dimitri and his production team out there at Power Auto Media, they won kind of a Golden Globe style award for production on that show, and it was more about the behind the scenes, the production part of it. But again, that was a story you couldn't have written a script. If you you couldn't have found somebody to afford to go by that script, so to speak.
Yeah.
But for all the sponsors and everybody that supported us in Horsepower Wars, we still say thank you. Very memorable experience. The people at Power Auto Media now, Scott and his whole team is looking forward to maybe bringing Horsepower Wars back at some point. We would love to have a battle of champions with a dream team. So 3 champions and then a dream team put together, because that in itself is hilarious when you take the absolute best that and you take 5 of those type of people that have never worked 30 minutes together, and you put them together for 10 days. It's pretty exciting. It's its own show. I mean, really, you can just film them, because everybody has a different way to put up tools, get out tools, leave tools out. I was working there. Why did you put that tool away? So it's funny. But we saw teams come together out there and really work together. But not all the time will it work that way.
Yeah, to quote Peter Harrell. Yeah, he's real good at doing stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Big fan of his.
Pete,
He's such a character.
that guy, not only is he a character, a comedian, a shower singer, but that dude is if we could ever get Pete to write a book, I don't know what chapter he would start on, but every chapter would be worth reading. That dude is a plethora of knowledge and just a great guy. If for anybody on the podcast that doesn't know Pete Harrell, if you're ever at an event, try to introduce yourself to him. That's a great guy, runs a great business, a great wealth of knowledge.
Nice.
I have the utmost respect for Peter Harrell.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Rich, do you think we should jump into the TKO round?
Yeah. I wasn't sure if we should get controversial and have some fun there, or I think we should. Why don't we chat just for a minute of, there's a lot of racetracks shutting down. The street racing scene in some areas sure seems to be taking off, combined with some YouTube channels. Maybe less controversial. I guess it's pretty important that we all support our tracks. And the back of the end track, I know that Bill tried to do some no prep stuff. I mean, there's still a lot of ways to have fun at the track.
Yeah.
The street racing stuff definitely is getting, when you shut down a whole bunch of tracks and there's no place to go, car guys are going to be car guys. So what's your thoughts there, Lonnie?
So very similar, life is more expensive today than it was when we were all 16 years old. When I was 16 years old and trying to race motocross, there wasn't a motocross track in every backyard. There might have been a power line that ran through your hometown that you could go run down the power line for some practice. But my point is we had to drive to go to a place we could practice, a track. The one thing that all of us have gotten so used to is that we all try to lead our work lives where things are within arm's reach. We try to do our things at home where we put our stuff in the garage where it's organized and at arm's reach. Well, street racing becomes a habit of arm's reach, meaning that you don't have to put forth the effort to try to get this race to the local racetrack next Friday night or next Wednesday night, and it becomes within arm's reach. What I wish people would just take time to go back to going to the racetrack has a social involvement, very much like the drag and drive events. And then once we get wheels in the burnout box, we can, it's all serious now. We can have that serious moment going down the racetrack, whether it's grudging for money, grudging for fun, or grudging for a cocktail. The deal is that at the racetrack, you're in a much more safe environment than you are at arm's reach on the street. When I start talking that way, I sometimes get slowed down of thinking I'm hypocritical because that's where I started, was the street. But again, we had to build for years to get anywhere close to the horsepower that you can drive off the car lot now, especially with the bolt-on power adder stuff that's available, that you don't go tear everything up. You bolt it on. This thing makes a crazy amount of horsepower. Tires and wheels and that kind of stuff is very affordable. And so I truly strive to get people to the racetrack. If your local racetrack is not doing programs that you want, meaning that, well, I don't go to the racetrack because they just let me test and tune. They won't let me race my buddy. They don't have events for me. They won't turn the clocks off. I don't want anybody to know how fast I go. I don't want any water in the water box. I want this to be like the street. Okay. Well, hey, just have a conversation with your manager of your racetrack, with your owner of your racetrack, maybe a small group of you get together. Racetracks are about making money. They're really about bringing people in the gate. So there are almost no racetracks come to mind right now that are not willing to have any kind of conversation about how to make the racetrack more inviting for more people on more nights or days. And so I just say that yes, within arm's reach is the street, but more and more, we got a lot of horsepower on the street. Nowadays, there are places that the cops just won't give you a second chance at all. They're impounding everything. They're writing huge tickets, cost you a lot of money. There's a lot of people getting hurt on the street because when somebody gets hurt, unfortunately, nobody wants to stick around and tell them what happened. Everybody wants to leave. And unfortunately, that person's waiting on somebody to call the ambulance. So at the racetrack, you have the best opportunity of being able to go home and have dinner with your wife, your significant other, your friends, your family, even when something bad happens. So I really stress going to the racetrack. If you don't like the program or there's no program there, feel free to call me at any time, because I will be more than happy to have a conversation with any racetrack in the country to try to further explain how important it is to make the track available to you.
Awesome. And yeah, while you were chatting there, I think, for me, that's what the drag and drive attraction is that, you're all your buddies are at the gas station with you. They're at the restaurants with you. You're cruising down the road with them. But yeah, in the end, you still race at the track. So it's that social aspect is huge. And you see that when you watch a street race. So I think the drag and drive also fills that void for a lot of people too. So no, those are great. That was awesome. Thanks, Lonnie.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Let's get to the TKO round.
Okay.
His flashlight's pretty good though. It hasn't ran out yet. I'm impressed.
It's
Yeah,
working pretty good.
My wife just opened the truck door and looked at me and she goes, "Are we about ready?" I was like, "Maybe."
All right, we'll go through this quick. You know what a TKO is, right? It's 5-speed transmission.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we got 5 questions. First year, what's the first car you owned or modified?
64 Impala Super Sport.
Ooh,
Nice.
nice.
And then I'm from Arkansas, so 4 weeks after working on that car, getting it up and running, we built a little 400 short block 4-speed car. A guy that worked for my dad at the time in the construction equipment business, loved that car. I'm a 16-year-old kid in Arkansas, and 4-wheel drives are driving around everywhere. And I'm thinking that I need a 4-wheel drive because all my buddies got 4-wheel drives. So I gave up, and I wish I had that to do all over again, but I gave up 64 Impala Super Sport to get a Chevrolet 4-wheel drive.
Nice.
Okay, second gear. What, in your opinion, has been the biggest technology changes to move our sport forward? I'm gonna limit you to try to think of stick shift racing, I think, because you created this class.
Man, there's been a lot of movement forward in a lot of areas. One, the biggest move in 10 years OEM horsepower. The available tuner, bolt on in your garage, buy it from Jeg Summit, mail order horsepower, and not just race car, but that is when I look at the drag and drive bunch, when I look at the drag and drive guys, when I look at the Saturday night guy that drives his car to the local racetrack, has a lot of fun, drives back home, whether he trailers it to or from, the cars driving on the street on drag radials is I don't ever want to see him run into a rainstorm because it's crazy in a rainstorm. But just the amount of cars you see today driving around on a drag radial tire. I would say technology really has bumped us forward in horsepower, and then everything else is kind of followed up, whether it be traction control, whether it be traction management, whether it be suspension packages, stuff that you can truly bolt on in your garage or in your carport, especially for the OEM car. The older model stuff, the ones of us that still love the 60s and 70s muscle cars, the bolt-on items for those is well beyond what it was 10 years ago as well. So that's a hard one to pinpoint, but I think horsepower is what has driven all the other technology to keep up.
All right, third gear. If you could spend one day with someone, who would it be and what would you do?
And your wife just came in the car, so be careful.
One day with someone.
Alive or dead?
Man.
We probably should have given you these questions beforehand so you could think about it.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. You guys could come up with all kinds of names. Like, I love spend a day with Grumpy Jenkins. I love spend a day with Smokey Unick. If that was an era question, and I think that we are in a great era of drag racing. I think we are in an outstanding era. If that was an era question, I would say, based on all the hype and all the history, is like mid-70s US Nationals with Garlits and Mongoose and Perdome and Coletta and the Grumpy Jenkins and just the old pro stock stuff. I would love to spend a day at the US Nationals in mid-70s. That's if it was an era question. As a person question, man, there are. I can think of 100 and I can think of none. But I've been very blessed to spend a lot of time with a lot of people over my years and ask a lot of questions. But yeah, I can think of 100 and I can think of none.
Perfect. No, that's
Perfect.
That's perfect. Yep. So this one might be a tough one for you because I don't know if you have any time for this, but what influences you to build a car? Like, are you building anything now? Do you have any cars? And what would influence how you would build it?
So I think what a guy has to do right now, as far as let's talk about building a class of car. He first has to really have a game plan. One, because it's expensive at no matter what level you build. I think you really have to have most of your questions answered before you start. Have a good game plan. And so for me, if I was going to build a car, I would want to know what class I'm going to race, what kind of ETs, speed, because the ET and speed is what's going to set the safety parameters or the safety requirements of my car. So it's kind of going to be indicative of what brands and what pieces that I buy. So that I don't waste a lot of decision. I want to have a plan on how fast I want to go, what kind of class I want to operate in, and what are the rules for that class. Are the rules pretty stable? Meaning that, is it a class that just came on board and I'm convinced the rules are going to stay stable? Then cool, be on the ground floor of that. Or if you're getting in a class that's been there for a long time, look back and see, has there been a whole lot of changes that you potentially could build something that won't fit in the class in a few years. So just try to do an amount of homework.
All right.
That would be my number one advice.
All right.
You sound like
really
an NHRA. You sound like an
really
NHRA
have
tech director.
Yeah, really have a plan before you start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Okay. So fifth gear, what, in your opinion, is the secret to stick shift racing?
The secret to stick shift racing is, this won't be a popular answer. Everybody wants to go faster. The secret to the longevity of stick shift racing is that if, let's say, there was one stick shift class, and there's multiples right now, but let's just say there was one. If that one stick shift class is controlled to an extent that it is not allowed to get carried away with rules. And when I say carried away with rules, that means carried away with open-ended rules, because unfortunately there are a lot of people out there that can afford to do things at the level they want to, and then there are a lot of us that can only do things at the level we can afford. So meet the masses, try to do things at the level that most people can afford, and keep it fun. An event is not only about going down the racetrack, it's about the social aspect. It's about meeting your buddies at the racetrack. A lot of us that grew up at the racetrack say that our family is the racetrack, because we spent more time with them than we did with our family at home. So what is the best way to stick shift nation? Stick shift guys are a breed of their own. Most of the time, until a stick shift guy breaks every stick shift that he has, and he can't seem to find something that won't hold the power, do you find that guy to own an automatic? But most of the time, a stick shift guy is a stick shift guy is a stick shift guy.
Perfect. We got one more question for you. We call this the T56, or the sixth gear question. I'm going to give it to Rich.
Yeah, you kind of touched on it already. But what advice would you give to somebody getting into this sport? I think you kind of answered that with influencing your build, but
yeah. So the one answer there is be as passionate and as invested as you want, but make sure that you're doing it for the right reason. At the end of the day, this is about having fun. This culture is about having fun. No matter how fast you're going to go, no matter how big a burnout you're going to do, no matter how bad of a reaction time you're going to have, it's all about having fun and trying to do better the next time. Really makes the bar better than yesterday. But get in the culture of, this is what you do for fun. This is what you do to add family members to your family. And you meet those people in the pits at the drag strip.
Awesome,
Lonnie. Well, we want to thank you very much for coming on here. You've given a ton of information. I'm going to have to go back and re-listen, as a matter of fact. But I do want to give a huge thanks to Stick Shift Nation for hosting this podcast, and for Travis doing all the back work to make us all look good on here. And of course, you can find Clutch Burners podcasts on 10 different platforms. And if you'd like to see this podcast continue and grow, just head over to stickracing.com, grab a Stick Shift Nation shirt, hat, or sticker, and Clutch Burner shirts are on there. So stickshiftracing.com. That's all I got. Rich?
Lonnie, are we going to see you at Sick Week this year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right.
Look forward to it. I was on the phone with those guys the other day, and making sure that we had Tech Day all covered for Orlando. Chassis certs available over there. So, yeah, I'll see you guys over there. I look forward to it.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, Lonnie, if you'll hold on just a second, we're going to conclude this here, and then we'll just have a little chat when we're done. So I think we're good.
Thanks again. Really
All right,
appreciate
thanks.
it, Lonnie.
Thank you, guys.